Good evening. 28 people have now been confirmed dead, while 268 are still missing after Wednesday's ferry disaster in South Korea, and authorities are arresting the captain. In an unexpected twist to the tragedy, a vice principal from the school where many of the students were passengers is believed to have committed suicide after he was rescued. Britain Planet reports.
As South Korean Navy divers and Coast Guard boats continued the search for survivors of the country's worst maritime disaster in more than 20 years, there was more tragic news. A deputy head teacher who was rescued from the ferry that sank with hundreds of his pupils on board is believed to have committed suicide. 52-year-old Kang Min-kyu was found hanged near a makeshift emergency hall set up for survivors. The ferry began sinking just before 9 o'clock Wednesday morning while on its way from Incheon to Jeju with around 500 people on board, most of them students and teachers on a school outing to the resort island. It sank within 2 hours. Hopes to recover anyone still alive are fading fast.
15시 26분경.
The Coast Guard said today that no more survivors had been found and divers had not managed to enter the hull of the capsized ferry. Beijing has confirmed there are 4 Chinese nationals among the missing. Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Hua Chunying said the Chinese embassy in Seoul is making sure no efforts are spared. Investigators now say the 3rd officer was at the helm when the ship began to sink. It's not known where the captain was or what he was doing at the time. Distraught friends and relatives of the missing students waited anxiously for news at this school today. Many of them complained that it took too long for the passengers to be evacuated. It's still not known why the ship sank. Survivors say they heard a loud thud and felt the ferry shake before it began tilting. Some said they were told not to move by the crew. Yesterday, an executive from the ferry's owner, Chonghaejin Marine Company, apologised to families of the dead and missing. The ship's captain is also being questioned. Lee Jun-sok apologised to the families of the victims. Britain Planet, ATV News.
Here in Hong Kong, District Councillor Christine Fong has accused the government of scare tactics in its bid to expand the city's rubbish tips and build a controversial incinerator on an island. Fong argues that the Cheung Kwan O dump can take in rubbish for a few more years. Bolong reports.
Hong Kong's dumps are filling up fast and will be overflowing with rubbish sooner rather than later. That's the message the government has been drilling into the population over the past few years, but it hasn't changed the public's opposition to its plans to expand landfills and build an incinerator. On a radio show this morning, Sai Kung District Councillor Christine Fong accused the government of fear-mongering, saying its claims that the Zhongguan O tip will be full next year is a wild exaggeration. Fong doesn't believe it and says the Environment Bureau is fiddling the figures. According to her calculations, the Zhongguan O landfill can handle 1 million cubic meters of waste a year, and she believes it can still operate for another 5 years. But World Green Organization Chief Executive Officer William Yeung insists it's hard to calculate the usage rate of landfills and how quickly they will fill up. He says people should wake up to the reality of the city's waste problem and called for the incinerator plans and landfill expansions to be passed in LegCo. Yu said if they aren't approved now, it will be harder to pass them in the future. Zhongguan O residents have long complained about the landfill, with many saying that it's too close to residential buildings and is smelly and causes health problems. Yu blamed bad town planning for the current problem and suggests building more recycling facilities and compensation paid to people who live near dumps. He didn't say where all the money would come from to pay for his plans. Fong hit back, saying it's not about compensation, but the health and safety of the locals. The government's controversial waste disposal plan cleared the first hurdle in LegCo last month after lawmakers on the panel on environmental affairs approved expanding landfills in Zhongguan O, Tuen Mun and Ta Kwu Ling, as well as building a massive incinerator on Shek Kwu Chau between Lantau and Cheung Chau. The second round of voting on the government's funding request has been pushed back to next month. Last year, the Environment Bureau was forced to shelve plans to expand all 3 landfills after massive opposition from residents and lawmakers. Bolong, ATV News.
Democratic Party lawmaker Wu Chi says the government's claim that people on the waiting list for public housing can move into a flat after 3 years is untrue and a play with words. At the same time, Tourism Commissioner Yeung has defended the government's mega advance fund after it came under fire in the latest audit report. Emily Xie reports.
In a bid to tackle Hong Kong's housing shortage, the government promised in January to build 200,000 new public rental flats by 2022, 20,000 more than its previous target of 180,000. But the latest audit report released on Wednesday cast serious doubt on that, saying there simply isn't enough land to build that many flats. Speaking on the radio this morning, Democratic Party lawmaker Wu Chi, who's also on LegCo's housing panel, said he's not surprised by the Audit Commission's findings. Wu said according to his calculations, the government won't be able to make any larger plots of land available for construction until 2020. He said it's a big problem and also criticized the administration's plan to build flats in between existing public housing estates, as it would greatly affect the quality of life of the nearby residents. The watchdog also warned that the public housing shortage could extend waiting times from 3 years to 5 years by 2020. Wu agreed and called the government's claim that people on the waiting list can move in by 3 years a play with words. Wu said public housing applicants usually have to wait at least 3 years before they're eligible, but there's no guarantee they will get picked in the lucky draw. He said many applicants wait much longer than 3 years before they get a government flat. The Audit Commission also accused the Tourism Commission's mega events fund of wasting public money by not operating efficiently and failing to attract overseas visitors. Its report also revealed potential conflicts of interest and irregularities in the fund's accounts and records. During a telephone interview on radio this morning, Tourism Commissioner Yeung defended himself. He insisted 69% of funding applications have been turned down over the past few years because of the fund's strict rules. But he said he will consider bringing in registered accountants to better monitor the fund's accounts and records. Asked if anyone in the fund's assessment committee failed to do their jobs properly, Yeung said it was short-staffed, but everyone there tries to do their best. He stopped short of saying anyone on the committee would be punished. The Mega Events Fund was set up to sponsor some of the city's biggest cultural and sporting events, including the Dragon Boat Carnival and the Hong Kong Golf Open.
The health chief has warned people traveling to the Middle East to be vigilant after more cases of Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome surfaced in Asia. But first, in our roundup of local news, 3 people have tested positive for dengue fever after traveling abroad. Yeung reports.
The Centre for Health Protection is investigating 3 dengue fever cases after a family contracted the disease overseas. A 64-year-old man and his 64-year-old wife were admitted to hospital after developing the symptoms, which included fever, rashes and nausea. Their 31-year-old son was also hospitalized when he developed the same symptoms. They are all in a stable condition and blood results came back positive for dengue fever. The 3 had just returned from a holiday in Indonesia. Health Secretary Ko Wing-man has raised concerns about the number of cases of Middle East respiratory syndrome in recent weeks. New cases have been confirmed in Malaysia and the Philippines, and the patients had previously been to the Middle East. Ko also warned there is strong evidence to suggest the virus could be transmitted from human to human. The health minister has called on local hospitals to look out for the disease and urged travellers going to the Middle East not to touch wild animals. He added there have been 240 cases so far, 90 of them fatal. Police were investigating outside Paktin Estate in Shamshopo after a man was run over by a minibus. The accident happened at around 9 a.m. this morning when the driver was heading down Nam Chong Street. Police suspect the minibus driver was speeding and hit the pedestrian when he couldn't brake in time. The 30-year-old man is in a serious condition at Princess Margaret Hospital. Yeung, ATV News.
A Beijing court has jailed 4 activists for up to 3.5 years for their role in small anti-corruption protests in the latest crackdown on dissent. Their lawyers slammed their sentences as too heavy, insisting the real reason for the convictions was that they had pressed for government officials to disclose their assets. Emery Sim reports.
There was a heavy police presence outside the Haidian District People's Court in Beijing this morning for the sentencing of 4 rights activists charged with gathering a crowd to disturb public order for holding small anti-corruption protests in the capital last year. Ding Jiaxi, a well-known human rights lawyer, was jailed for 3.5 years, while veteran activist Zhao Chanqing was jailed for 2.5 years, the court said on its microblog. Fellow protesters Jiang Baocheng and Li Wei both received 2-year sentences. All 4 faced a maximum penalty of 5 years in prison. One of the lawyers representing Ding slammed the sentences as too harsh. Zhang Keke thinks the real reason for the convictions was that the activists had pressed for government officials to disclose their assets. Zhang said Ding would appeal. The 4 are part of the New Citizens Movement, a loose-knit network whose members held peaceful protests in Beijing last year. According to their arrest warrants, police accuse the 4 activists of organising and carrying out street political activities, from displaying banners to making speeches urging officials to disclose their assets. The verdicts come days after Beijing's High Court upheld a 4-year sentence for Yeung, a founder of the movement, who was jailed for several rallies he organised in front of the Ministry of Education to demand equal education rights. 10 New Citizens Movement members have faced trial this year. The grassroots group promotes clean governance and advocates working within the system for change. The ruling Communist Party has repeatedly vowed to combat rampant corruption, with President Xi Jinping threatening to target high-ranking tigers and low-level flies in the face of public anger over the issue. But Beijing has cracked down on activists pursuing the same goals, viewing independently organised anti-corruption protests as a challenge to its grip on power.
Overseas again, tributes have been pouring in for Nobel Prize-winning writer Gabriel Garcia Marquez, who died at the age of 87 following a bout of pneumonia. But first, in our roundup of international stories, Toronto Mayor Rob Ford, who was caught on camera smoking crack last year, has kicked off his re-election campaign. Britton Clannett has more.
Toronto Mayor Rob Ford took to the stage to launch his re-election bid. Ford has been a major embarrassment for Canada's biggest city after he admitted to smoking crack cocaine and buying illegal drugs. He was also seen in a video making death threats to an unspecified person during a drunken rant. But he's pledged to clean up his act.
Though there has been some rocky moments over the past year, I have experienced how none of us can go through life without making mistakes. And when they occur, we learn a lot about ourselves. Humility, the kindness of people, and the spirit of second chances.
Although he has apologised repeatedly, he has refused to step down. And the council cannot oust him because he hasn't been convicted of a crime. US Secretary of State John Kerry took off from Geneva following crisis talks on Ukraine. The meeting between Russia and Western powers aimed at ending the violence was hailed as promising. All parties agreed illegal military groups should leave, those occupying government buildings must drop their weapons, and that anti-government protesters would be granted amnesty. The US and Europe believe Russia is orchestrating an uprising in eastern Ukraine, but Moscow says the Ukrainians are simply angry that their elected leader was overthrown by pro-West protesters backed by Washington and its allies. The body of Colombian author Gabriel Garcia Marquez was taken from his Mexico City home for a private cremation ceremony. The Nobel Prize winner, who was considered one of the greatest South American authors, passed away following a bout of pneumonia. He was 87. Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos declared 3 days of mourning for their national icon, while Mexico announced a memorial service will be held at Mexico City's Bellas Artes Palace on Monday. Meanwhile, tributes have been pouring in from world leaders and celebrities to the man known affectionately as Gabo. Colombian pop star Shakira said Gabo would always be in her heart. Garcia Marquez was best known for his 1967 magical realism novel 100 Years of Solitude. It sold more than 30 million copies and was honoured with a Nobel Prize for Literature in 1982. He leaves behind his wife of more than 55 years and their 2 sons. Britton Clennett, ATV News.
Health authorities are warning holidaymakers going to the mainland to avoid wet markets and farms so they don't catch the H7N9 bird flu virus. The warning comes as tens of thousands of travelers head abroad for the Easter break. Here's Anne Sim.
Holidaymakers flocked in droves to airline counters this morning to take advantage of the 4-day Easter holiday. Travel agents said Japan and South Korea topped the list of popular holiday destinations again this year, with bookings up 10% compared to last Easter. They said the main attraction in Japan was the cherry blossoms, while Hong Kongers also chose South Korea because their dramas are quite popular here. Although Cambodia and Vietnam proved to be popular as well this year. This young girl said she was heading to Indonesia with her family to sample the good food. While this young traveller's family was taking her to Tokyo to check out popular anime titles and to eat sushi. On the 1st of April, Japan raised its sales tax from 5% to 8%, but that didn't deter some holidaymakers. This woman believes the tax hike is acceptable. While this tourist says she's already been to Tokyo, so she wanted to try out Hokkaido instead. The Centre for Health Protection, meanwhile, today warned travellers to avoid wet markets and farms, particularly if they're headed across the border for Easter. That's after mainland health authorities reported a new case of the deadly H7N9 bird flu virus in Jiangsu province. The case involves a 60-year-old man who has been admitted to hospital for treatment.
Sport news. Defending champion Novak Djokovic lost just 1 game on his way to the Monte Carlo Masters quarterfinals, while Roger Federer got off to a bumpy start. Lucas Rosso couldn't have asked for a better start against his third-round opponent Roger Federer at the Monte Carlo Masters as he broke into a 3-1 lead. But Federer clawed his way back with the help of some agile net play. The 4th-seeded Swiss quickly gained control of the match soon, winning the opener 6-4 after Rosso hit long on his return. It was a walkover for Federer from that point onwards, eventually seeing up the Czech 6-1 and wrapping things up in less than an hour. Defending champion Novak Djokovic had an even easier path to the quarterfinals. The Serb put on a clinic for Spaniard Pablo Carreno Busta, who was named ATP's most improved player last year. But the 22-year-old was no match against the world number 2, losing the first set 6-love. Djokovic, who was in top form after claiming an Indian Wells and Miami Masters double, seemed like he was at a warm-up session at times. He went on to dismiss Carreno Busta 6-1 to reserve his quarter-final ticket. Earlier in the day, top seed Rafael Nadal was also at his best when he faced unseeded Andrea Seppi of Italy. The king of clay, whose string of 8 consecutive titles was broken by Djokovic last year, delighted fans with his powerful forehand stroke. The Spanish world number 1 will now face compatriot David Ferrer in the last 8, after going past Seppi 6-1, 6-3 for his 30th straight win on clay. And finally, the weather forecast for the next few days. Hot and fine tomorrow with coastal fog in the morning and night. Temperatures will range from 22 to 29 degrees. More of the same conditions over the rest of Easter. Here's a look at the weather around the world. That's all the news for now. Thanks for watching ATV. I'm Raymond Yeung and enjoy the rest of the Easter weekend. Good night.
Coming up, Gold Coast tour at Guangdong of China. Masterpiece of nature attracts so many climbers. Trek up the mountain. Breathtaking views are all the way. Amazing creatures add more fun. Take adventures. Reach the summit. Embrace cheers on the top. All about documentary. The Great Summits 2. Saturday night at 10. The most famous New Year concert in the world. Spreads joy and optimism for the new year ahead. This new year is bound to be a fabulous one. Heavenly music is in the air. ATV Easter Celebration, the New Year's concert at the Vienna Philharmonic 2014, Sunday night at 8:30. Battling for the MasterChef crown, taking the challenge to make delicacies. Going through rounds of tough tests, who can stay till the very end? Finally, the most exciting moment comes. Celebrity MasterChef 7, Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday night at 9.
Open your eyes to see the beauty of the world.
Open your arms to others for love and peace.
Put your hands up, put your hands up. Help us to save lives.
Open your hearts to those who got sick or weak. Open your minds to all the ways to help. Put your hands up, put your...
Every blood donation is a gift of life. Please come and donate blood.
Science doesn't mean boring data. It's full of wonders and comes from everywhere. Everything around us carries amazing secrets you may not know. Follow scientists. Discover the fun of the unknown. Documentary World. Know it. Thursday night at 9.
West of Taiwan Straits and east of Zhujiang River lies a beautiful bay. It has an unusual wave-blocking phenomenon and silver-lined beaches. In this episode, we take you to Honghai Bay in Shanwei.
Thanks for joining our Guangdong Gold Coast tour. I'm Gilbert Lam.
I'm Grace Chung.
This episode will take you to many coastal cities in Guangdong.
That's right, Gilbert. We've arrived here today to show you this beautiful scenery. We're currently at the Honghai Bay Tourism and Economic Development Zone, here in the coastal region of Shanwei. And today we'll take you to enjoy the sea breeze and have tasty seafood as well as explore this mysterious island.
We'll also be experiencing nature in our tour along the coast. Are we ready?
Ready!
Let's go!
The Honghai Bay Tourism and Economic Development Zone is 18 kilometers east of Shanwei, with Jishore Bay in the east and Honghai Bay to the south, consisting of Zhelong-Nanao Peninsula and Shegong-Liao Peninsula. It's 210 kilometers from Shenzhen and 330 kilometers from Guangzhou.
Honghai Bay has a mountain behind, and the undulations of this mountain range complement the lakes, island group, ports, and reefs, resulting in beautiful natural vistas. The sandy beaches meander along the coastline and islands. It's a place of many interesting cultural and historical sites with a subtropic coastline. Zhelong-Nanao Peninsula is situated in between where Honghai Bay meets Jiaxi Bay. It is known as the unicorn of eastern Guangdong. Ha! Behind us lies the Zhelong Peninsula, also known as First Wave Watching Bay in China. Grace, you're more observant than me. Can you see the difference in the waves coming in from both directions?
Huh? Why is the current so strong on one side and look, it's so calm on your side? Incredible.
This is the amazing thing here. The so-called unicorn horn blocks the choppy waves coming in from the east coast of Zhejiang Peninsula, resulting in a great contrast of sea views from both sides. When the sea is choppy in the east, the water is calm on the west coast. In fact, when there are big waves on the west coast, then the east coast is quiet and calm. It is regarded as a rare phenomenon in the world, and is also how wave-shielding peninsula got its name.
The peninsula is made of reef rock. These rocks are formed by the wonders of nature, hydraulic action erosion.
Facing the magnificent blue ocean, watching the tides and the waves against the shore is simply majestic. You'll feel enlightened and worry-free, and one can truly understand the philosophy of tolerance brings you a calm and peaceful coast. Compromise brings you a new horizon.
Here at Honghai Bay in Shanwei, we can see how picturesque it is, and the ocean is really beautiful too. But apart from the scenery, this place is also a regular base for water sports in Guangdong province. Most sailing athletes in China like to come here to hang out, as well as to train and compete with each other to test their skills. So let's get a little closer and check out how they train. Coach, let's go and check them out.
All right.
Let's go! In November, it is still warm in Honghai Bay. The athletes of the Guangdong sailing team are having their winter training here. Sailboats take advantage of the wind and ride on the waves. The sails look like little dots in the ocean. On the waves, they look like snowy white seagulls. Only the brave ones who overcome the choppy seas are winners in their lives. Till this day, over 10 international and national races have been held on the waters of Honghai Bay. It has become an important base for China's water sports competition and training. There really are a lot of boats in the race.